the meeting to order and begin with the invocation, opening invocation.
The book of Revelation, the Lamb is Jesus, and we hear a song with words that we're going to have as our prayer. Great and marvelous are your deeds, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, King of the nations. Who will not fear you, Lord, and bring glory to your name? For you alone are holy. All nations will come and worship before you, for your righteousness has been revealed. Gracious God, we thank you for such a far-reaching description of who you are and how that comes down to every moment with every breath and heartbeat that you give us, including in this place for yet another city council meeting. We lift up each one who is gathered here. Thank you for those that serve on behalf of others. And truly to you be the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. We'll go ahead and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. It's nice to see a few people in the crowd. It's awesome. We will go ahead and move to approving tonight's agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion from Roy, second from Blake. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same side. Motion carried. That brings us to approving the consent calendar, which is the minutes of our May 27th meeting and the payment of bills.
So moved.
Motion Roy, second Doug. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. That brings us to item number 5, to consider the second reading and adoption of ordinance 557 regarding the sale of property.
So a copy of the ordinance is in your packet. Again, this is the second reading for the 75 feet on Highway 10 and the strip north of the alley that we're proposing to sell to Mid-Minnesota Federal Credit Union for their relocation. So I recommend approval.
So moved.
Motion by Roy, second by Doug. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Brings us to item number 6, is to consider the approval of Resolution 1992, liquor license for 2025-26, the Boxcar LLC.
So a copy of the resolution is in your packet. There's also some additional information on an incident that occurred last fall down there that is noted on the application. I think there was an email from Chief Larson as well. You know, that's something that happened last fall. There's been no further incidents that we're aware of. And she basically is dealt with that situation, so. I don't know if there's questions related to that or not.
Entertain a motion.
I'll move the approval of the liquor license 1992.
We have a motion. Is there a second? I can't second it. I can't second it.
Yeah.
I will second that. So we have a motion and a second. Motion by Doug, second by myself. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
I abstain.
I abstain.
I would like more information on the vote.
So we have, okay, so we have the discussion, and then the discussion, and we had a vote. So we voted, so the motion passed. Move on to item number 7. Discuss solutions to commercial traffic and
Excuse me. Doug and Ron voted yes. We abstained. 3 abstained.
But it wasn't 3 voting no, so abstention basically is like a non.
Yeah, there's no votes, just 3 abstains and 2 positive, so it's a pass.
My mistake.
Huh?
My mistake. No.
Okay. All right. Move on to item number 7, discuss solutions to commercial traffic in residential areas.
So we had, petition or signature brought forth by property owners or neighbors up in the area of 6th Street related to commercial truck traffic, primarily, I think, traveling to and from 3M, and had some discussion about it at council. Then, and a couple weeks later, talked about it at the Public Works Commission. We looked at different things like, kids playing or slow, children's signs, things like that, which have been found not to be effective. Doesn't necessarily slow down traffic, creates a false sense of security for parents and kids. We have explored, on the fringes as far as a truck route, but I don't know how semis get to every location in town if they're not allowed in town, which is also a challenge. So the recommendation that was reported out from Public Works Commission was basically to stripe crosswalks at all 4 corners, both on 6th Street and 7th Street of NP Park. Crosswalks have demonstrated that it slows traffic, makes people more aware of pedestrians, and basically see what the impact of that might be. We also have been in communication with 3M, and they've been in communication with their trucking companies to encourage different routes or be sure to watch speed. I don't have the impression necessarily that there's a lot of speeding, but in areas that are tight, even going 30 might appear to be fast. So I don't know, Scott or Missy, if you guys have anything to add on that.
I did review a study done by, it's called Minnesota LTAP. They're related to the University of Minnesota. There's also Department of Transportation was included. Just based on that study, the only recommendations that would be there would be what they call traffic calming. So a painted crosswalk is off of the study they've done. There'd be nothing more recommended than just a painted crosswalk.
Is there any discussion or comments from the council? This is basically just a discussion item on the agenda. Any thoughts on the proposed solution?
I guess for me, I patrolled city streets for 33 years, and I don't recall any incidents during my time where there's a problem. We did have some complaints periodically. 8th Street had some issues at one time when the trucking company was on 8th Street. Problem when you got residential builds up around commercial that's been there since I grew up right out in that area. And I'm gonna say that 3M moved in here sometime around 1965 or somewhere in there. I don't recall exactly, but one of those things, you know, that, you know, it probably wasn't right, or was right at the time, but not for today, but you can't take a big company like 3M and, you know, just tell them to leave town because we don't want your truck traffic on. And there's really no good way of getting to there other than through the residential, so.
The other thing that I pointed out at Public Works, and I played around with this on the computer, when you plug in, whether you're coming from the east, west, or south, you plug in 3M on your Google Maps, guess where it takes you? Right up 6th Street.
That can't be changed, can it? Or can it? I don't know.
I have no idea. You know, I suppose it depends on your settings, you know.
Partially it comes from the fact that the stoplights and your, you know, to use Fifth Street, you know, everybody's coming out, the trucks are coming on the highway. So they're gonna jog over and try to, you know, I mean, they're just not gonna make those maneuvers, or not, that definitely wouldn't be safe or very easy at any time. And, so the obvious direction is straight north from the stoplights, where they most likely drive into town and make a right-hand turn or left-hand turn, so. I don't know, I don't think there's any real good solution.
Yeah. I mean, so, you know, I think, you know, from a staff standpoint, our recommendation would be, let's move forward with the crosswalks. We'll continue to patrol it and put the speed sign out there on occasion and keep an eye on it. And I think, we'll hear about it if it, gets worse or continues to be a problem, so.
I think, just speaking about the issue, and, I think that moving traffic off of Sixth isn't a good solution, because then you're gonna endanger some other street. And putting it on, a designated truck route, from what I understand, is not an easy task. It involves a lot of maneuvers, and it will cause its own problems with, roadways and those people who, oversee those roadways. And so I think, looking at the recommendation based on a study, and I think it's a good first move to try to see if we can positively affect that. And I think that we have the opportunity to watch that and look at that and to make other decisions if we need to down the road. So that's where I stand as well on this. This isn't,
I just think too, you know, being that I grew up in this town, I was driving a truck to 3M. May it make more sense for me to take Airport Road or County Road 83, depending on which direction I come from? Absolutely, but for people that aren't from this town, that don't know that 83 and Airport Road exists, or might be a faster route, they punch in the maps on their phone and it's gonna bring them right up 6th Street. So that's a problem that's probably always gonna happen. It's gonna dive into 6th Street no matter what, so. But I do like the idea of potentially looking at crosswalks and see if that doesn't make a positive effect. I don't think it's gonna cause any harm by putting a crosswalk, so.
the other thing is too, that we have a good working relationship with 3M. I mean, they have good leadership over there, and I think that continued conversation with them. I mean, we've already had some conversation with them, and they have talked with their truckers, and so I think we keep that conversation going as well to make them aware of that, and that will also, I think, reap some benefits as far as just how that traffic navigates that street, because I think that's important too. You know, if they treat that street with respect as far as the residents on there, I think that will also have a
Yeah,
positive impact.
and they've been really good to work with. The other thing I think we talked about at Public Works Commission, we got a number of truck type data from 3M, and per week, and they went back 2.5 months. Per week, it's anywhere between 4 and 8 trucks per week that make deliveries up there. So, you know, it's not, I'm assuming that they turn around and come back on the same route. I don't know that, depending on what they're hauling, but, you know, worst case scenario, you'd have 16 trucks a week.
Yeah, so. Since there's no action on this, if there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. Is that okay with everyone? Move on to item number 8. Consider approval of Resolution 1993 appointing Zions Bank as successor paying agent.
So there's a copy of the resolution in your packet, and, you know, basically, we have some bonds that require a paying agent, and US Bank has been doing that for us for years. US Bank decided to increase their fees by, what, 50% increase? You know, so a 50% increase, Zions Bank will do it for what we had been paying at $500. So our recommendation is that we make the switch to Zions for those 4 bonds that we still have outstanding on there.
Who is Zion Bank? What, are they foreign entity or?
No, they're based out of Chicago. I know the vice president. I've met him a few times at a couple of conferences I went to, and we have a pretty good rapport, and he's helped me out with a few other things. So I have a good working relationship with him, and I don't even know the US Bank people, so I think that would be better too, because I have an issue now with US Bank that I'm trying to get resolved, and I don't really know how to turn to, so knowing who to turn to would be helpful.
So Zion Bank, has that been around for a long time too, like US Bank?
Yeah, they've been around for a few years. I don't know exactly, but.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion Roy, second Blake. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. That brings us to our committee reports, the first of which is the Staples Economic Development Authority.
Good evening, everyone. Just have a couple of quick updates for you. At the last Staples EDA board meeting, the EDA board received and approved 2 separate loan applications for facade and awning, both of which were received from Colleen Frost for the Bachelor Block Opera House. She's got some work on that building that she wants to do, so just wanted to let you know that those loan funds have been approved. She's going to very likely be using her building as collateral, so the EDA would be a lien holder against that building, so we're working through that process. Just a couple of steps there. There was some discussion at the board on EDA-owned property that's just south of Mid-Minnesota Federal Credit Union. There is an interested potential developer looking at doing some residential development there, so we had some discussion at the EDA board about what might be a fair asking price and if they felt comfortable with dispensing of that property for such a purpose, and it seemed that they were willing to do so. The CLC lease agreement on the ag land that we have was signed for this year. And then just a couple of other updates. The meat cutting facility for Farmers Union, that happened. The groundbreaking happened last week. It was very great. Really good turnout and an enjoyable program. Let you guys know that the step building contract for deed has been fulfilled. So that contract for deed is satisfied and good to go. So we're working on filing that with the county. And then the only other thing that I have is that Discover Staples banners for light poles around town have been ordered. It's like 100 banners that we ordered, so it'll be, it'll look nice when it's all up. So that's all I have. Oh, I guess I should tell you that invoice, that amount was about $7,400, which leaves about $40,000 of the blended grant funds remaining. I have a quote that I got today for parking signage around town for public parking. That will eat up probably another $11,000. So just so that you guys are aware, and I've got a few ideas on how we'll close out the rest of that. That's where that is. So any questions, concerns, discussion?
Doesn't look like it. Thanks, Lucas.
Thank you.
Move on to the Public Works Commission.
So we only had one small item worth discussion at the Public Works, and that was discussing Fourth Street regarding the streetlight poles. The light poles north of Fourth Avenue, which is north of the Catholic school, they're kind of a lighter color. They're getting dingy looking, and many of them will have to be removed temporarily as part of the project. So we will be looking at replacing those. However, during that discussion, we also just talked about trees again. It seems like there was a couple letters in the letters to the editor in the paper that I had read. So I may have done a poor job of explaining what was going on, or it got misinterpreted. I'm not sure, but so a couple of things I read in the letters to the editor that I want to make sure that are cleared up is that we are not removing all the trees. There are certain trees that are in the way of the infrastructure that will have to be removed. And when we remove them, we will not replace them in the boulevard, but we will give the property owner the option of having a tree replaced in their yard. When we do remove them, it's going to be for the sake of, if you look on the east side of 4th Street, there's a lot of storm sewer infrastructure that is right up along the curb or even, partially in the boulevard itself. When we dig that up, there's just not going to be a way to save some of those trees. So we do take trees very seriously. I mean, we plant them every year. We order some and plant some. So this isn't it's not a project where we're just trying to get rid of trees, but there will be some that have to be removed, and then we will try to replace some as well. But just not, when we replace them, they will just not go back in the boulevard. So I think that's where the confusion was, but if there's any questions regarding that, I'd be happy to answer any. That's all I have, too, unless anybody has any questions.
I just want to thank you for clarifying that. And I actually have spoken to some citizens out in the community who did misunderstand that. And once it was clarified, they understood it and understood the reasoning behind it. So I think that did help. Anybody else have any questions for Scott? All right. That brings us to open forum. Anybody would like to come up? If you guys would just identify who you are, and then give you a few minutes here to speak.
I'm Ken Closey. This is my dad, Tom Crawford.
The troublesome son, what's he called?
I'm his best son.
We are.
We are the two people who wrote the letters to the editor. I read that article and I was deeply disturbed. I was on the board, the 4th Street Beautification Board, for many years, and for some of those years I chaired the board. I was very familiar with our activities and how hard we worked to make Staples become a tree city, which we did succeed in for many years. And this is not to offend anyone here, but in a lot of those years, with a lot of the plantings, we received resistance from the city street workers. They didn't want to plant trees, they didn't want to water trees, they didn't want to prune trees, they wanted to drive big vehicles mainly, but we were able to work with them enough, and at the time Jerry Brever was the city administrator, and he worked very closely with the board. In fact, he wrote our agendas and attended all of our meetings and was very helpful. I don't know what it's been since, but when Nate Matthews came along, he thought it would be a good idea to roll the 4th Street Beautification Board into Parks and Rec. And when I first heard that, I thought, well, that sounds reasonable, it kind of fits. But when I got on Parks and Rec, I found that we were spending the vast majority of our time discussing what to do at the community center and plans for Dower Lake. And that wasn't why I joined the Forestry and Beautification Board. That kind of became a secondary item, and you were on the board at that time
Yep, I
too.
remember that, yes.
So, when I read that, I thought, well, you know, Trump's got his big, beautiful bill, and we're gonna have our big barren byway, because all the trees are gonna be cut down. That's basically what it said, at least the way I read it. So, you know, now, I don't know, did these plans originate with the city of Staples, or with Todd County, or with the state?
So, the plans for the trees came about because of the need to do the infrastructure work on Fourth Street. You know,
And there's no way of doing the infrastructure work without destroying the trees.
Well, Scott explained just a minute ago that some of the infrastructure actually sits at curb line. So when they dig that up, they're inevitably going to destroy half of the root system on those trees or more, and there's just no way of saving those trees. Now, I think he did clarify that we're not going to remove all of the trees that you guys planted.
Approximately how many trees do you anticipate removing?
I don't have a count yet. I can look at the plans and get that for you.
It'd be nice to know, because, you know, being on the board, I worked with some very dedicated people, many of who are not with us anymore, a lot of retired rails, people like Fritz Humberg, Russ Dahl, Tom's got a list of the rest of them, Tom Walhall helped us out a lot, Jerry Reaver.
Yeah.
And when I read that, I thought, this is really disrespectful to the efforts of those people. And they're no longer here to argue the case.
Yeah.
So I took it upon myself to do that.
I appreciate the feedback.
So I would suggest you remove absolutely as few trees as you can. Absolutely as few, not just where it's convenient.
Well, that is generally the goal on any project like that. It's,
I hope so. So
Well,
I'll turn to,
Ken, you know, on our Second Street project that we did over by the school, we had the Second Street right in front of Beth and Getty's house, so they're on Second Street. We ran into a similar dilemma there, and they did keep some trees there and took some trees down, some of the larger ones that were probably going to be impacted by the digging. So we did preserve some trees, and I think we replaced some trees there. So I'm sure we'll treat Fourth Street project the same way as far as trying to preserve everything that we can.
so is the sequence going to be, you're gonna cut down the trees and start digging first, or you're gonna start digging first and then cut down the trees that need to be removed?
Well, I don't remember how it went on Second Street.
they'll probably remove most of the trees before they dig, because if they get to them, I mean, that can create
could
quite
fall
a
over.
dangerous
So are you
situation.
talking like in the area of the football field, or all the way between Second Avenue and Warner Road?
3rd Avenue to Warner Road.
That whole stretch is going to be done, and then as far as the trees that need to be removed, I think it'll have to do with.
Yeah, I mean, the underground utilities are gonna be located, you know, I mean, they have been located, they're drawn up on the plan. So there's some of those where you just know that the tree that's 2 feet away from the storm sewer pipe is gonna have to go, but we're not gonna remove trees unless we have to. We go out and plant trees every spring,
What
so.
was in the paper sounded like it was gonna be clear cut. That's the way it read.
Was he able to clarify that for you so that you don't?
Somewhat.
Okay.
You know, I'm still not keen on the idea of taking out trees that we planted. Fourth Street, the trees have grown to a point now where they're established. And they'll continue to grow until they're mature, and it'll be a beautiful tree-lined street.
Yeah,
And if you're taking trees out, why bother? And is this gonna set a precedent for other streets where you're gonna go in and take out boulevard trees?
I'm gonna let Tom speak, and then maybe we could just address a couple of things before we close.
I fully agree with what he has said. I don't have a lot of further questions, except as you go north on 4th Street, starting the bank corner there, going north, there are about a half of the trees are large almost fully grown trees that apparently preceded the planting that we're talking about in 1993. They're about twice as big as the other trees. Are they more likely to be saved, or?
Well, we won't go past Warner Road.
I'm talking south of Warner Road.
Oh,
From the Unity Bank
Oh, Unity
oh,
Bank,
sure.
okay.
north to the credit union.
On the east side of the road?
Mostly on the east side.
Yeah, okay.
There's probably a few on the
Is
west.
there gonna go, is a sidewalk gonna go there?
yeah, so the Fourth Street is a county road, and their rule is once we start that project, anything that's within their road has to be replaced with new. So any infrastructure that's in there, that's within the county right away, has to be replaced. We cannot reuse anything. So they have to dig everything within the right of way out and replace it with new.
So,
And again, we'll try not to, we'll try to save as many trees as we can, and that's always the goal on an infrastructure project anyway. But we just we can't compromise anybody's safety.
The other thing that we haven't talked about, we've been talking about mains. There's also service lines that may impact trees as well, depending
You
on.
mean like for lights, street lights and whatnot? Is that what you're speaking about?
I'm talking water and sewer service lines going to the buildings, that extend out into the street.
That's not a new issue, not a new problem, and that's been done quite successfully in residential areas without taking down all the trees.
Since 1985, when you
Yeah, I
did.
mean, it depends on where the
Yes.
tree is in relation to the homeowner's service line.
the company that is engineering this, when we were on Second Street, we had a lot of discussions about this, and they actually said that the new practice is to not put trees in those locations and to not replace them because of the long-term effects of the trees and the root systems on sidewalks and infrastructure. So the fact that we are proposing to try to minimize taking them out and then to replace those that we take out is actually probably going to go, I don't want to say against, but it'll probably be something that they don't normally do because most of their projects,
Was this becoming common practice everywhere now? That
Yes.
we take out boulevard trees and don't plant them?
it is.
Because I know it said that you plan on giving trees to private property owners. My experience on the board, the FAB board, was most of the people in this town don't give a damn. We tried to get people to adopt a tree on the boulevard, to give it a little water once in a while, and, we just batted our head against the wall. And if you think people are gonna adopt these trees and take care of them, I think you're...
We're hoping that the people that we offer to and they take it, will take it because they want a tree there and will take care of it. And the people that don't have any interest in taking care of a tree may not take us up on the offer. That could possibly happen, Ken, but it's a situation where I think we are trying to do our best to minimize the impact because I think everyone recognizes, the beauty of them and where they're at in their growth process. It's just, I think you're looking at a situation where 20, 30, 40, 50 years is what we have to be looking ahead as well.
Well, it kind of scares me because we planted a lot of trees in Staples, a lot of boulevard trees, thousands of them, literally thousands of them. And basically what I'm hearing is that as they're in the way, we're just going to get rid of them. That's what I'm hearing.
We aren't going to get rid of all the trees planted in Staples.
But you're going to get rid of them on the boulevards.
If we have a project that involves, this project involves county right away. So that also is impacted, as Scott has mentioned. So we're not going to be in the business of removing all the trees in Staples. We're going to try to avoid that as much as possible.
But that goes back up to my initial question. Did this plan originate with the city, the county, or the state?
It originated with the city.
That answers my question.
Yeah, I can tell you the reason if you want. There's some really old and clay tile sewer in there that is cracking and is causing some concerns. And we've also had some water services that are galvanized where customers' lines have almost stopped flowing because they've corroded so bad. So they've just created multiple problems, and then the county was going to do a mill and overlay on that road. And when I spoke to them and I said, hey, we've got issues underneath there, they said, well, we can work together and do a reconstruct if you guys are gonna,
Are you widening the street?
no, that will remain the same.
So Tom, a little bit of history, you probably wrote the articles back in 2002-ish or so. When
1993, you mean?
No, there was, back in about 2002, the county, was proposing to do an overlay on 4th Street. And we wanted to get in and do sewer, water, storm, basically do this reconstruct back then. Couldn't get it put together, and the county went ahead and overlaid it, which basically put that project off, well, over 20 years now.
Yeah.
But the infrastructure needs to be replaced in there. You drive up 4th Street, you see cones and barricades sitting out in the middle of the road. That's from sinkholes, and a lot of that's caused by issues below ground, so.
Neither of us are worried about the new street. Will probably look very nice, be well done and look very nice. But we really would like to see those trees preserved.
So I would request that the council advise the Public Works Coordinator to hold to that plan to save as many of the trees as possible.
Thank you for your input.
And going forward to, when you decide to do another street plan, air it in the public before you detail the plans.
Well, this project is slated for 26.
Right.
So that's next summer, and Scott and I did speak about making things like that public as soon as possible, so you guys are able to understand and process it both emotionally and everything, so that you can understand this and understand exactly what's going to happen. And we'll do the same thing with any other project that we're going to do that may entail the same type of work, so that people have an ability to understand it and look at it before things are being dug up. So we will do our best. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, both time and I thought it was somewhat ironic that May 25th issue had an article where they're going to take all the trees out, and then the next week they had honoring John Morton to plant a tree. I thought it was rather.
Well, the tree location was different. We're still planting trees. We're still ordering and planting trees in the city of Staples. We still are a tree city, so we still have that designation. We're going to keep working on it. Thanks, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Come up and re-identify yourself. I know you've been here before, but just for everyone's.
Robert Drake, I live at 525 6th Street Northeast. I want to thank the council and also the city for looking at the commercial truck traffic. That's the petition I brought forward a couple months ago. Just a few thoughts, and I will make this brief. My first thought is a question. I don't need an answer today, but that question was asked by a few of the people when I went door to door, and that is that street rated for that amount of truck traffic? Don't need an answer now unless you have it just off the top of your head. The next are just kind of going to be comments and thoughts. I, again, thank you to the Scott for working with them on the crosswalks. I would ask you rhetorically whether or not you feel that kids specifically will be using those crosswalks. And I can answer that question because it's a rhetorical question, because I live on 6th Street and I see how kids cross 6th Street to go anywhere in Staples. It's probably how they cross almost any street in Staples. Wherever they are, they go and cross. Now that's the beauty of Staples. We live in small town America where we probably do not want to restrict the freedom of our kids and make them attempt to cross in a crosswalk. And I can tell you right now, and you already probably know, no kid in Staples is going to use any crosswalk you put anywhere. Now, I will look forward to those crosswalks that are painted there, slowing down truck traffic. I actually hope that that happens. I'm doubtful. And I can guarantee you, or I can place a bet, those crosswalks that you paint there and will need to repaint repeatedly will never be used by a person unless they exactly happen to be going right in that from corner to corner. Kids especially, when they're biking, are not going to get off their bike and walk across that crosswalk. So those crosswalks will not be used for one of the two purposes, which is to get people to be in the crosswalk and then to cross safely. Whether or not the second purpose is fulfilled will be determined, which is visually, truckers, we hope, will see the crosswalks and will voluntarily slow down. I live on 6th, I'm outside a lot, and I will kind of keep a tally. Obviously, I don't have a radar gun on handy, so I kind of am taking a guess. If we're not able to restrict truck traffic on that street, and by restrict truck traffic, I mean regular daily truck traffic, so not the occasional truck. Primarily, there seems to be 2 delivery trucks, transport companies that use that street going to 3M. It's Hunky's Transport out of Wadena, and then it's FedEx. Primarily those 2. Hunky's primarily has one driver specifically that is usually servicing that route. So it may not be an issue where they need to Google how to get there. So that's one way to address that. I want to thank Blake for saying that because he grew up here, if he were a commercial truck driver, he probably would take one of the 2 alternate routes. Now, yes, we would be, if you were to restrict truck traffic on 6th Street and put it on those 2 other routes, we would increase traffic there. But there are far fewer houses, far fewer children on those 2 streets that I labeled in the petition. Those are also wider streets. I would invite City Council to randomly, especially during the summertime, during the daytime, drive down 6th Street from this corner all the way to 3M at 30 miles an hour. When you have cars on both sides and the dentist is seeing patients and kids are crossing. It's difficult in a car to want to drive 30 miles an hour, and yet commercial truck traffic is going 30 miles an hour. In fact, Hunky's Transport told me one time on a very difficult phone call that their driver was indeed going 32 miles an hour. Now, when you see cars on both sides and a park and kids, I cannot imagine going 32 miles an hour. I can't imagine going 30 miles an hour in a 18-wheeler truck. So if we cannot restrict that traffic off of 6th as a regular truck route, I think a third option would be for a truck reduced speed of 25 miles an hour. And with that, I'll close my comments. And again, thank you to the city.
Yes, thank you for your, thanks for coming, and thank you for commenting.
You're welcome.
Yes, appreciate it. I appreciate that people come to our meeting and that they respectfully discuss issues that are close to their heart. That's what this meeting is for, so I thank you guys for coming. We will move on to the city administrator's report.
If I can do one item under open forum here, since it fits better than my report. Discover Staples Railroad Days Street Dance. There's been a lot of discussion related to street dance, and a couple of bars that would have been next in rotation have declined to do the dance. Lefties is interested in doing it. They did it last year. They've reached out to, I think the email said they'd reached out to Bex. They don't want to do it. But I do have an email here from Lefties. You know, they would like to do it. They need to move quickly at this point to secure a band and reserve the stage. I indicated to Leo that everything's got to go through Discover Staples for Railroad Days. They sent all the information to Discover Staples. And I have an email here from Renee. They're going to work with Lefties, but just want to run it by the council, make sure the council's okay with Lefties doing the street dance at that
Looking for the
location.
consensus?
Yeah, that's fine. They just need to pull the trigger on the band.
Yeah, I don't have an issue. I have a question on that, though, Joe. Discover Staples doesn't want anything to do with the street dance, so why do they have to go through that?
Because they run the
They run
Railroad Days.
more
Yeah.
and stuff.
No,
Well,
Railroad Days, I think.
And it shifted from the chamber to Discover Staples, but I don't remember how many years ago, the council basically said, anything that's happening on Railroad Days weekend, would run through the chamber and now through Discover Staples, just so you don't have, 14 of the same things going on.
I just didn't know
so-
why, if they don't want anything to do with it,
Yeah.
why.
Well, and I guess I can't answer that. I don't know for sure that they don't, but
We had a long,
they're willing to work with Lefties for street dance this
Right.
year.
we had a long discussion at Discover Staples at our meeting about it, so they are involved in it, they just don't, they want the planning to take place at the entity that's going to do it, so it's sort of just toward,
And that's the way it used to be, wherever it was.
yeah.
I mean, they should have moved the band a year ago.
Yeah.
So you want-
As I understand it, they've got a couple that are still available, but need to move on it, so.
So consensus, everyone seems to be okay with that, Doug?
Yep.
Okay, sounds like it's consensus. Thanks for bringing that
I'll let
forward.
them know, yep. Other items, Lucas talked a little bit about the Farmers Union groundbreaking. That was Friday afternoon. Pretty good crowd, lots of out-of-town folks on the Farmers Union board came. Senator Klobuchar was out there, and they're basically ready to go. So to get that project moving. So I think all told, that I believe was about an $8 million total project. Building permits 2.5 for the structure, but then all the modulars and everything else, I believe their information is right around 8 million. So, had the ribbon cutting for the pickleball courts down by the Southside Fire Hall skating rink area on Thursday. So there was a nice turnout for that. Lots of people play pickleball, as it turns out. And want to make sure we thank all the donors and volunteers that put in a lot of time and effort to get that project done. So we'll take care of it. Dower Lake Safe Room, just a quick update, and you'll get this a little bit in the Park and Rec report at the next meeting. But the week of July 7th, anticipate Shingle Decker Concrete being on site to start that project out there. And precast will be here second week in August, so it'll arrive by the time the walls are complete and get that done. On the agenda for next week, or for next council meeting, we'll have a grant amendment from the time that the application budget was put together to this year. There was a little bit of a cost increase on the concrete stuff, so that has been approved by FEMA. We just need to approve that agreement and send it back to them. And I think I mentioned before, the siren is up. The optimization team from Federal Signal did come through last Tuesday, I guess it was a week ago, and did all their final tweaking on that. So that'll roll people out of their sleeping bags in the campground if need be. Community Center Boiler Project, we did solicit quotes as opposed to immediately going out to bids, just because the engineer's estimate was kind of right around that threshold of the 175 that would trigger the requirement for bidding. And RJ Mechanical came in with a quote of $151,650. So that was wonderful, a lot less expensive than I was anticipating. So that'll also be on the agenda for council in a couple of weeks to go ahead and award that to RJ. They won't be able to start until right after swimming lessons, so August 11th. that week, we anticipate getting in there. And that's all I have.